Hi. Am I in focus? Am I out of focus? Do I care? No? Long time no see. Actually, when was the last time I posted a video? I think it was more than a week ago. It was 7th and now it's 20th. So that's like almost 2 weeks. Why would I care? I don't know. Why would you care? I don't know. Anyway, today I'm going to tell you things that no one has ever told you before. Things that I wish someone told me about wearing vintage. So the thing is, when you're starting out and when you're following all the Instagram accounts, you kind of have this weird point of view where you completely, like, you don't know much. And now, because I'm such an expert, like, it's not like I've started wearing vintage like half a year ago and I still occasionally wear it. I'll tell you all the secrets. So the first thing is, I kind of could have predicted this, but I had no idea people like this would drag so much attention. So basically when you're dressed sort of vintage or like retro and you go out, people go crazy. And I mean, it's not like they talk to you or anything, but you can tell they're staring at you all the bloody time. And at first it can be really intimidating. I'm kind of used to it now, like I kind of feel this is probably what famous people feel like they can feel people just staring at them and they can feel, you know, their eyes, but no one's saying anything. So I guess you're just becoming more aware of yourself because people are watching what you're doing, which is not a bad thing, I guess. But also, something I had no idea would happen is that people actually come up to you and say nice things, and this is pretty cool. I think like a week ago I was pretty stressed about the film and I was just sitting at a cafe and like on my phone and trying to answer all the emails and stuff, and this girl came up to me and she was like, "I'm so sorry, but you look so cool." And she was like, "I like the moment you came into the mall, I literally just dragged my boyfriend and I was like, look at this woman." And that was like a bit embarrassing, like I didn't really know what to do because I never know what to do when people say things like that, but that was also so nice, and I told her that she made my day, and you know, that's just like those little things that shift your mood a bit. So sometimes when I'm like on the bus stop or just walking through the streets, people would basically, you know, passing me, they would go like, "I love her style," and it's like, you know, you feel like in a music video, and it's just something that I never really expected. Like I thought if people are gonna say something, they're just gonna say nasty things, so I never really expected people to go like, "This is so cool, like how did you do that?" Or, you know, a lot of people are trying to kind of guess the decade, so they go like, "Is it like 1960s?" and I'm like, "Almost." So I think it's pretty cool because it makes you realize that the way you dress actually brightens up those people's days. Like, at least there's something interesting happening, so it's not like there's this freak that they look at and they go like, "Who the hell is this?" But it's just something interesting that catches their attention, and maybe, you know, throughout the day they would go like, they would meet with their friends and they would go like, "I've seen this really cool lady today, she was wearing like, you know, full-on vintage clothes." The second thing I had no idea about when I was starting out is how many different like shades of vintage there are. So I kind of imagine vintage style as this kind of one style. Like, you know, you have people wearing elegant clothes, you have sporty style, and then you have vintage style as kind of like a separate category. And what I had no clue about is that vintage style is so rich and it's just so exactly. And so like you can wear vintage clothes that are in the fashion magazines, or you can wear completely casual vintage clothes like slacks and plaid shirts and, you know, saddle shoes, and that those two styles are completely different. And then you get people that wear stuff that celebrities would wear at the time, and then you get people wearing stuff that ordinary people wear, and then you get like more rockabilly style, then you get like pin-up, which is something completely different because it kind of draws attention to the figure, like it's usually very flattering to the figure. And then on the opposite side you have like very modest and casual clothing, so there are just so many different styles, and I found that actually quite hard because at first you're probably like, as long as it's vintage, I'm gonna wear this. But then you realize that not all of them actually suit your personality or the way you feel. Like I remember at the beginning I was kind of trying to go for like this high fashion vintage, which is super elegant and like you really have to own it to actually wear it. So I kind of realized halfway through that this is not the way to go. Like I am not made to be wearing those like new look Dior stuff. So I remember I was trying to get some clothes that would be more like sporty, like vintage sporty, like let's say high-waisted jeans and saddle shoes. But then I realized maybe that's not exactly my style, so like I don't know what I'm trying to say. Let's just move on. I had no clue that I'm gonna get so many red lipsticks. I remember my friend a couple of years ago, she was already sort of into vintage and she was like, I don't know why I keep buying those red lipsticks, like I already have at least 10. And I was like, that's so weird, like you only, like why wouldn't you just use one red lipstick? That's more than enough. Now I kind of understand why, because right now I have around 6 or 7 red lipsticks and they are all different. Like one of them I use for every day because it stays really long and like even if I eat or anything it just stays on my mouth, which is cool because I hate like just running to the toilet to fix my lipstick. So when I know I'm gonna spend a long day somewhere and I won't have time to fix the lipstick, I'm just taking this. But on the other hand, the color is not so great, so then I have this which I really like, but then this one sort of like during the day kind of fades away. So then I have another one which is sort of in between, like it has an okay color and it also stays long. Like every single shade is kind of for something different, I guess. It also depends on how long it stays on your lips and how it feels, because like this one is really dry, so some of them are more greasy than the others, so I kind of get it now, like you need all of them, it's not like it's an option. When I was like starting out, I kind of wanted to do all at once. I was like, okay, I'm gonna wear vintage, and I went to the shop and I just bought a pile of clothing and I was like, this is what I'm gonna wear. And then, you know, then you get frustrated because obviously that's not the coolest stuff, and then you see all the ladies on Instagram and they have like a shitload of clothes and you're like, how did that happen? Like how rich must these people be? But the thing is, they've been wearing vintage for about 10 years most of the cases, so you have to do it gradually. You kind of build the collection. Like throughout this year I got some like vintage essentials, I would say, that now I would probably wear for at least a couple of more years. Like I got like high-waisted trousers, I got a vintage coat, I got a vintage swimsuit. So those kind of essentials that build your wardrobe, but it's not like you get them all at once. Like it took me a year to get those and then I'm still missing, like I don't have any kind of vintage dresses, which is kind of pathetic. So it takes time. I mean, I understand it now, so I'm less impatient and I'm kind of like, I know it's a process and I know it's gonna take me a while to actually get to the point where I'll be happy with everything I have in my wardrobe. Right now I'm kind of filling the gaps with like modern clothes that can be styled in a vintage way, but I know that's not my fault, or that's the fault of my finances, but that's just how it is because it's been less than a year. And I mean, it's kind of obvious, like if you start collecting, what can you collect? Stamps. You're not gonna get like a huge collection the first day you start collecting stamps, right? That's such a ridiculous example. I don't know who collects stamps anymore. The sad thing about buying like old stuff is that it's old. I didn't quite know that until my friend started buying old stuff and she was like, it's not as glamorous as it looks. Like you can see people wearing authentic vintage clothing on Instagram and like social medias, and usually it's just like swoon, like they look so good and so beautiful. And the really amazing thing about authentic vintage clothing is that it gives you the silhouette. So like if you buy like reproduction clothing, it's not always made in a way it would be back in time, but at the same time it's super old, so most of the times you need to repair it, you need to constantly take care of it, you need to fix all the holes and rips. It just constantly requires your attention. It's kind of like having an old car, I guess. Like it obviously looks super good and looks beautiful and you can still drive it, but it just requires constant attention and a lot of money and effort put into it, which is something you don't see on Instagram pics. Like you don't see someone repairing it, or like you don't see what they don't want you to see. So there's something wrong with my turban today. I don't know what's happening. It looks like a I don't even know what it looks like. So what also happens is you start buying stuff that you actually don't like or like never liked just because it looks vintage. So there is a lot of stuff in 1940s that I used to hate actually, but since I'm kind of really into this era now, whenever I see something similar, I buy it because I'm like, that matches the style, which is kind of ridiculous. It's kind of like trying to be fashionable and wearing stuff you don't like just because it's fashionable, but at the same time it helps you because it kind of, you know it's gonna match, because it matched back in time. I'm just gonna show you the shoes that I got, which are actually ridiculously ugly. So I got myself shoes like that. I remember back when I was a teenager, my granddad would wear shoes like that, and I would go like, these are grandpa shoes. And yet, when I like went to one charity shop and I saw them, I was like, oh my god, they look so 1940s. I'm so getting them. And now I'm wearing grandpa shoes just because. So this is actually quite funny. Like, you can see the perception changing when you're really into something. But then I remember from back when I was interested in actually modern fashion, I would do the same thing. Like, I remember going like, oh, I hate these, like I hate this type of, let's say, heel shape, and then a year later it will become fashionable, so suddenly everyone will be like, oh yeah, that's so cool. And I remember doing it myself. I was like, oh well, I guess it's cool now. So it's kind of the same thing, except you don't have people suggesting what you should like. It's kind of like your decision. This was a bit different for me, but I guess if you're starting out, you have no idea how much a hairstyle helps you, like how much it adds to the actual outfit. Like, you can be wearing some lame H&M dress that is sort of vintage style, or like could pass as vintage style, but if you do the right hairstyle, it's just gonna like kill it. It's just so good. And I remember I kind of sensed that, like I knew it's gonna happen because I was already into costumes, and it's kind of the same thing. Like, if you're wearing a Victorian dress and if you just do the right hairstyle, it suddenly all adds up and it all becomes like a, what does it become? A cool thing. And I've also noticed the way people react is hugely influenced by the way my hair looks. So like, if my hair is in a really like elaborate and curly hairstyle, people will react really, what's happened to my English today? People would react. So like the girl I just mentioned in the cafe, I was wearing this like 1940s curly half poodle with like a snood and a headpiece, and she was just like, wow. If I was just wearing my hair down, I doubt she would even notice me. It just makes such a difference, I think, because no one puts that much effort into their hair nowadays. So if it's something that people don't wear every day, like if it's not a braid or if it's not just loose waves, it's just so different that people notice it instantly. Not to mention, it actually looks super nice. Like, I really love having my hair done, but I don't really love the effort. But also the thing is, like, once you kind of discover all the vintage hairstyling thing, suddenly you start hating straight hair. Like, you feel like you shouldn't even leave your house if your hair is not curled. If I have straight hair, I usually wear this. Today is the day that I didn't curl my hair, so basically I'm just covering them up. And it's just so weird because it's such a normal thing to do nowadays, and yet if you're getting really used to like curling your hair, you're suddenly like, hell no! What a disgrace! And that's actually really cool, because that's the way women back then used to think. They were kind of like, I'd rather not leave my house at all than leave it with my hair straight. And now I kind of understand why, or at least how that feels. Because it's kind of like when you're wearing really visible makeup every day, and suddenly if you were supposed to go out without your makeup on, you would go like, no. So it's kind of the same thing, I guess. And the last thing is that if you are wearing vintage, the chances that you would be labeled as the vintage girl are huge. Not like amongst your friends, because obviously they don't really care, but when it comes to people that you work with or like study with and they don't know you very well, like they might not even know your name, you will be labeled as the vintage girl. You'll be like, oh, that vintage girl, yeah, I know her. So this is not really a bad thing, I guess. This is kind of what it is. Like, But it can be irritating sometimes because if you have some other interests or passions, it kind of just disappears because, you know, they're kind of labeling you based on your appearance. But I guess that's normal. Like, obviously if you're like a super punk, you will be labeled as punk, and there's nothing wrong with that. So these are all the things, I guess. What am I doing? These are all the... I'm kind of getting tired of all these talking head videos, and I wish I could just go out with the camera and everything, but it's just so freaking awful. It's so cold. And I mean, once I'm back in Poland, which is in less than a month, I would hopefully actually start talking about something else in vintage, like maybe some costumes and stuff.